Psalm 23. And we're going to take our time through it. The number one passage I have preached, taught, whatever on is Psalm 23, largely because of funerals. When in doubt, I'm showing up Psalm 23, whether I know them or not. I've yet to find a passage that it's helpful because it's familiar. It's helpful because it's helpful, right? That there is something about the image of the shepherd that is just so good. So, but I've never really. When I was at Goshen, we did it. We spent 6 weeks, one verse at a time, and we'll do a little bit of that. But what is fascinating about it is it's a metaphor. It's a poetic, and so it uses poetry and a metaphor. So there's a lot of ways you can approach it, and so I want us to take our time with it. I don't know if it'll be 6 weeks, maybe more than 6 weeks. I don't know, but I think it'd be a refreshing break from Genesis, but really a beneficial one. A passage that we all know well. But I think it would be even more a blessing to really take our time through it. In fact, you could probably recite it from memory. Many of us could. It's only 6 verses. Well, I want us to start in Psalm 23, verse 1, but we're not going to get past like the 4th word in English. The Lord is my shepherd. That's as far as we're going to get. I want to highlight the word shepherd. And what I want us to do is to start all the way in Genesis. I know I said that we're done with it for now, but we're going to start there and go all the way to Revelation. That theme of the shepherd is all over the place. And we need to understand that Psalm 23 is the first of 2 climaxes when it comes to the shepherd motif in the Bible. The second one, of course, is Jesus. But this really embodies what it is we're looking for in the shepherd motif. Has it ever just hit you that it's everywhere in the Bible, the shepherd? There's shepherds everywhere. When Jesus was born, who comes to see him? Shepherds. I mean, they're everywhere. And they're so common, we can not notice it. And I want us to see that this role of the shepherd is central to our understanding of who God is, central to our understanding of the gospel. So let's start here. We have spent quite a bit of time. This is a classic Protestant theology. The 4 offices of Christ, right? Prophet, priest, and king. We've done that before when we did Melchizedek many, many months ago. We did the royal priesthood, and we looked at Melchizedek, Jethro, Moses, David, Jesus, all that. Well, it is good to have that trio, prophet, priest, and king, and that Jesus embodies all 3. There's really a 4th that we're missing, and that's shepherd. And what the Bible does is it takes these offices, these messianic offices, and it just weaves in and out. For example, David is a king, but he often functions as a priest. Remember that when the Ark of the Covenant's being brought back to Jerusalem, what's David doing? He's leading the processional as king, wearing the priestly ephod. And you read that doesn't make any sense. Well, in one sense, no. He has no business doing that. He's not the priest. But in the narrative of Scripture, it makes complete sense. He's the new Melchizedek. Jethro functions as the royal priesthood, right? And that he's a priest, but yet he's the chief of Midian. Moses will play with this, right? He's the tribal chief, if you will, of Israel. But remember, he's the son of Aaron, or son of Levi, rather. He's the brother of Aaron. So he's of a priestly line. And so we see that throughout the Bible. What does Jesus do? He functions as both king, the kingdom of God, and as priest, as mediator of a true and better covenant. Well, we could do the same thing with shepherd, that the shepherd office weaves in and out throughout the Bible. So, for example, as we'll get to, David functions as king and as shepherd. And the Bible takes those 2 offices with David and just mixes them all the time. And so, although we usually have a trio of offices, prophet, priest, and king, I think we're missing theologically by skipping the 4th. And I want to show this. Any idea who the very first shepherd in the Bible is? Bible trivia. This is probably on the one that you gave me, right? Name every shepherd, right? Is Abel. Abel, right? From the very beginning. Now, ESV doesn't call him a shepherd, or King James, whatever it is I'm stealing this from. Don, I may need your help with it. It's doing that thing. I'll read it. Genesis 4:2. And she again bore his brother Abel. Abel was a keeper of sheep. The word keeper, I think this is King James, the word keeper is the same word used in Psalm 23, verse 1, shepherd. It's the same word. He's the shepherd of sheep is what it says. To emphasize, he's a shepherd. So the fourth person mentioned in the Bible is a shepherd. So what you get in the sacrifices of Cain and Abel is one is offers domesticated animal of sheep, the other offers fruit of the land, right? That's Cain. God accepts the gift of the lamb, rejects the fruit from the ground. The patriarchs are all shepherds. We don't need to look at all this any details. Abraham, look at this. Abram had sheep. He's a shepherd. Now, they had other animals, of course, but at the very least, sheep. Isaac and Rebekah. Remember that Rebekah is first introduced as a shepherdess. And we talk like, are there any other shepherdess? And I think someone mentioned one or two that would work. But it just stuck out to me when we went through Genesis 29. And so Isaac and Rebekah. You remember that Isaac, to impress Rebekah, all the shepherds are waiting, and together they're going to move and he's like, oh God, when he sees the pretty girl, right, he eats the spinach like Popeye, and he moves it all to himself. He sees Rebekah and then cries. So Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, right? Jacob, remember, among other animals, God's blessed him. You remember the whole spotted and speckled, this is the wrong reference, the spotted and speckled sheep with Jacob, right? Here is when they go to Egypt, the 12 sons, the men of Israel are shepherds, right? So they bring their flocks down there to Egypt, right? So all your major characters in Genesis are all shepherds. The key in Genesis to understand this motif, I think, is Genesis 22. This is where Abraham offers Isaac. Remember what Isaac says. Isaac, they're going to the mountain. He's like, okay, we're going to go offer a lamb. Hey, Dad, I think you left something at home. Right? You didn't leave the stove on. You forgot a lamb. And what is it that Abraham says? Jehovah Jireh, God will provide. And you read the story. Isaac is the shepherd. He's the lamb. Abraham's the shepherd. Isaac's the lamb. And yet in the end, God intervenes not with a lamb, but with a ram. And so the question is still remaining, where is the lamb? And Abraham's answer is still true. God will provide a lamb. And if we could skip, what does John the Baptist say? Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. The one who is both shepherd and sheep. So we could quickly move to Exodus, right? Moses. Go to Exodus chapter 2. I think this would be good to see. Exodus chapter 2. If we really want to get nerdy, we'd spend a long time on Moses and how his role as liberator comes with shepherd and all that. Exodus chapter 2, starting in verse 11. One day, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on the burdens. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were stricken together. He said to the man in the wrong, why do you strike your companion? He answered, who made you a prince and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? No, just pause and think about what's happening here. Moses is trying to liberate the Jews. Right? What we see here is Moses, his anger got the best of him. But this is an act of revolution. It's an act of liberation. If you kill enough Egyptians, they'll let them go. And so this is where Moses is trying to take the work of liberator on himself. He's a man of action. He's a man of violence. And then when he catches Hebrews fighting, like Cain and Abel, and Moses intervenes, what do they say? Who made you prince? Well, Moses is prince. The name Moses means son of in Hebrew, or in Egyptian. So Thut, Moses, right? The son of Thut. It also means drawn out of water. That's the Hebrew, but it means son of. So the question is, whose son is he? And here it's, who made you prince and judge? Well, Pharaoh did. In one sense, Pharaoh. But you see, it means more than who your father is. The Jews understand, look, we have no part of what you were trying to do. We have no part of that. That's just going to make our lives worse. So, and then it said, Moses was afraid, and he thought, surely this thing is known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. Moses fled from Pharaoh, stayed in the land of Midian. He sat down by a well. Now, this story is going to mirror that of Isaac, right, with the well, all that sort of stuff. Go down to verse 16. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. Notice he's a priest. And he had 7 daughters, so it's interesting, right, the perfect number of daughters. They came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. So, we know nothing about Jethro except 2 things. He's priest, he's shepherd. You see how these themes are already mixing together. And remember, he's a Gentile. He's a cousin of the Jews, but he's not. He's a Semite, but not a Jew. Verse 17, the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. It's just like the Isaac story. When they came home to their father Reuel, and he said, how is it that you have come home so soon today? They said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock. Now, did you hear the language? An Egyptian delivered us. But that's what Moses tried to do in Egypt, and he failed. Now that he's fled, what's the first thing he does? He's still in the act of liberation. He's still a deliverer. And the issue here is sheep, shepherds. These are bad shepherds. Moses here is starting down the road of being a good shepherd. All right? So, verse 20, he said to his daughters, then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man. He gave Moses the daughter Zipporah. We had a cat named Zipporah, so let you know what I think of cats. She gave birth to a son. He called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. This is the story of Abraham, sojourner, Abraham. Moses relives the story of Abraham. And then Israel relives the story of Moses. And Jesus will relive the story of Israel. It's almost like the Bible was written by God. Now, so notice that having chosen to live with the man, he's leaving behind his role as priest, and he's adopting his role as shepherd. Because in chapter 3, this is how we're introduced to Moses, leading up to the burning bush. Now, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian, who, remember, is priest and shepherd. And he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness, came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Well, this is Sinai. Okay? So the story of the burning bush begins with Moses adopting the role of shepherd. And what you have for 40 years is Moses learning leadership by means of shepherding. This becomes the primary tool of understanding leadership, particularly kingship in the Bible. That a good leader is a good shepherd. Because you could be like Moses and take things by force. That's a bad leader. Read the history of the kings of Israel. Those are bad kings. A good leader is a good shepherd. He functions as a shepherd. But you can see the royal shepherd motif being brought together, not just in Jethro, but in Moses, because he is still a prince of Egypt. He's been exiled. He's a sojourner, but he still is a priest and he is shepherd. So these two roles are coming together. Before he was just prince, now he must learn to be shepherd. Once he has 40 years of learning life as a shepherd, he is then ready to be called by God to fulfill his calling, and that is as deliverer. So Moses stands before the king, not as prince, but as a shepherd. The one who can handle snakes. The one who can lead his people through the wilderness. You know, like the valley of the shadow of death. Moses embodies that narrative. Well, for the sake of time, let's get to David, okay? First time we meet David, where is he? First time he is mentioned, not even by name, where is he? You remember Samuel comes, he's going to anoint a new king? And David's missing. He's still at work. He's out in the field shepherding the flock. So the first thing we know about David is he's a shepherd. He's a scrawny kid, good-looking kid, ladies. If he were taller, you wouldn't be able to resist him, right? But he's a handsome feller, but he's the young kid. He's the scrawny kid. And so all of his brothers are broad-shouldered, muscular, they're tall. They look like kings. Yeah? But David looks like a shepherd. He's training to be a king like Moses by watching the sheep. Well, what's the second thing we see about David? It's the story of Goliath. Now, what is the story of Goliath? Sheep language, shepherd language, all over the place. If we had time, we would read the whole story. But consider that in the story, David comes from the field to feed his brothers and to get news to take it back to Jesse. Jesse probably has some influence in Israel from what we can tell. And what is the brother saying? What are you doing here? Who's watching the sheep? Who's taking care of the sheep? You're nothing but a shepherd to us. We're warriors. Right? And that's the question they keep asking. And then he gets word, this dude talking smack about Yahweh and Israel. And he's like, I'll throw down with this cat. Why does David, what is the source of his confidence? The source of his confidence is not that he's a trained ninja warrior. He's a shepherd. It's like, I've killed lions before. That dude ain't nothing on a lion. You ever have a lion run after you? It's a life or death situation. I could take this cat. So he goes to see Saul, King Saul. What does Saul do? All right, you want to fight? Good. He clothes him in his armor. He's dressed as a king. It's the king's armor. What does David do? No, homie, this ain't for me. You know what I need? I need to be clothed like a shepherd. He's got a slingshot. Right? And we know from history these things were deadly. Really deadly. And so he defeats the giants. Remember, we've talked a lot about the role of giants and how it later shows up with demons, part of the spiritual warfare motif, which we can't get into. So you get that with him, which takes you all the way back to the Exodus story and all the way back to the Noah story. Also, he's described as a serpent. He's got scaly armor, right? When he falls face forward where the dust of the earth, he consumes it, and then his head is chopped off, Genesis 3:15. All of that is on purpose. So he embodies the serpent motif. Well, it is a shepherd in the place of the king who slays the giant. So you get this up here. And he says, look, I can take this guy down because I'm a shepherd. Well, when he's anointed as king, shepherd language shows up again. So this is it when he's fighting Goliath. In 2 Samuel, when he's anointed, all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, in times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led us and brought us in Israel. That's what a shepherd does. A shepherd leads. And the Lord said to you, you shall be shepherd of my people Israel. You shall be prince over Israel. Notice the parallelism. It's king and shepherd are now combined in the person of David. He's a new Moses. Okay? Well, later, David decides to violate his marriage vows and to kill Uriah, be with Bathsheba. Well, Nathan confronts David and he uses a parable. What is the parable? It's about sheep. This is the beginning of it. It's about sheep. A rich shepherd had a lot of sheep. A poor shepherd had one lamb. And David understands. It's not easy having sheep. It's not easy raising sheep. Every sheep is valuable. And that is an act of injustice to go and steal someone else's lamb. And what does he say? You're the man. You're the shepherd. Right? I mean, it's just right there if we just see it. I think this is the last one. 2 Samuel 24, when David does the census, right, and God gets angry, and God gives him 3 choices. And his choice is, I'd rather suffer under the judgment of God because there's mercy with God. And here it is, 2 Samuel 24. David spoke to the Lord when he saw the angel who was striking the people, and he said, behold, I have sinned, I have done wickedly, but these sheep, what have they done? David's king when he does this. So you see how naturally these come together. Ultimately, what we see is the shepherd motif directs us to consider who God is. This is the whole point, is that figures like Moses and David serve as under shepherds. These men serve as agents of God's care. As the chief shepherd, God entrusts these men with his sheep. And this would have been standard operating procedure. Much like Jesse would have been the chief shepherd, David would have been the under shepherd. Jethro would have been the chief shepherd, Moses would have been the under shepherd. And so we get a picture of who God is through these under shepherds. Right? So when David writes, the Lord is my shepherd, The reader has been prepared for this. And the way we know God is shepherd is he has shown us, good shepherds, they often make bad mistakes, but shepherds, Moses has his staff through the wilderness, is what parts the waters, but is what brings water out of the rock, all of that sort of stuff. It buds. It does all kinds of stuff. Let me give you just a few examples of this. You led your people like a flock by hand of Moses and Aaron. Well, Moses led them through the wilderness, right? What's the psalmist saying? No, God did that. God was the true shepherd. But it was through Moses, your under shepherd. Psalm 78. 78 is a great one to look at. This is Moses. Then he led out his people like sheep and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. So Moses is, but it's God. Chapter 78 of Psalm 78 does the same thing with David. He chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following the nursing ewes, he brought him to shepherd Jacob, his people, Israel, his inheritance. With upright heart, he shepherded them and guided them with his skillful hand. How did he do that? Well, as king. But he was a shepherd king, a royal shepherd. There are three things a shepherd does in the Bible that gets connected to God. Three things. Do I have these up here? Yeah. Presence, protection, provision. Presence, protection, provision. When we eventually get to Psalm 23, you'll see all three of these. A shepherd is one who is with his sheep, and they know him. One who protects his sheep, his rod and his staff protect me, and provides for them. Quiet, still waters. He makes me lie down. Right? Green pastures. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Right? This is what we expect. And remember, this is what we find in God. God, in the story of the Bible, he's coming to dwell with his people. He protects them. Read the Psalms. He provides for them. Look at Moses and the manna. God did that. Can I just add a footnote here? I was thinking about when I was walking the church earlier today. The word husband is a pastoral word. What is the job of a husband?
Care for his wife.
Yeah. It's right here. What's wrong with men right now? It's the biggest problem we have right now in this culture. Absentee fathers and husbands. Failing at this. A man who is not present is a man who will never protect and provide. Like, this is, so guess what Father's Day is going to be about next year? This is it right here, right? This is it. And notice, in the Bible, we use the word husband all the time. I do. We don't even think about its etymology. It's the dude married to the wife, right? That's how we define it. But its history is to say, if you want to understand the role of a husband, read about shepherds. Right? This is the role of a shepherd. It's to husband sheep. This is our job as men right here. Not more complicated than that. Well, boy, that'll preach. So next Father's Day, stick around. That's probably what we're going to have to do. To go from David to the rest of the Bible, what you get is the image of the shepherd becomes embodied in the spiritual leaders of Israel, and they fail miserably. So what you get with the prophets is they come in and say, the shepherds have failed Israel. They failed in these three areas. So I took out a bunch of passages, and I just picked, not even the ones that were most juicy because they're long. Read Ezekiel. My lands. So your three prophets you want to look at is Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Zechariah, if you want the juicy stuff. Let me give you a few. Jeremiah 2. The priests did not say, where is the Lord? Those who handle the law did not know me. The shepherds transgress again. Well, who's the shepherds here? Is it the dudes out in the field? No. It's the priests. Because they, and prophets, prophesied by Baal. Remember, the prophets and priests are to be under shepherds of God. And they're over there working with another fold. Jeremiah 23, woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord. Who are those? The priests and prophets. Right? Ezekiel, I'll give you one from Ezekiel. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy, say to them, even to the shepherds, thus says the Lord God, shepherds of Israel who have been feeding yourselves, should not shepherds feed the sheep? I mean, it's very clear what he's talking about, but he's using that metaphor that's been developed throughout the biblical narrative. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the sons of Israel, Moses, David, and plenty of people in between. And now you have In the monarchy is you have shepherds who are not shepherding. They're failing in this way. And what this did was it created in the Bible this longing for a true and better shepherd. You can probably guess where this is going, can't you? You already know where this is going. Let me give you a few examples. Psalm 95. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. He is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and sheep of his hand. Today, if you hear his voice. You see what happened is now you're going to bypass the under shepherd. You're just going to go straight to the shepherd. We want the shepherd. We want him to shepherd us. Psalm 2:9. So Psalm 2 is significant in its location from Psalm 1. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them. Oh, that is the wrong verse. Well, it's a good verse nonetheless. Isaiah 40. That was the wrong verse. It is in Psalm 2. You will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those who are young. Isaiah 40 is a really, really important chapter. It's a real turning point in Isaiah. But it's looking forward to the work of God. Ezekiel 34, which I think we just read some. Yeah, we were just in verses 1 and 2. Here's verse 11. For thus says Lord God, behold, I myself. Notice God saying me, me, me. I myself, repetition big in Hebrew, will search for my sheep and I will seek them out. Can you think a parable in the Bible where a shepherd seeks out the 99? It's Jesus saying, that's me. That's me. It seeks the one, leaves the 99. It sounds like Ezekiel 34. Ezekiel 37, my servant David shall be king over it. Well, David's dead. So this is a true and better David. They shall all have one shepherd. They shall walk in my rules, be careful to obey my statutes. They shall dwell in the land that I gave to my servant Jacob, where your fathers lived. They and their children, their children's children, shall dwell there forever. And David, my servant, will be prince. Oh, did you see it? David, the shepherd. David, the prince. It just so naturally mixes those metaphors for us. So when you come into the Old Testament, you're thinking, okay, what am I looking for here? I'm looking for God to shepherd his people. And he will be the son of David. Well, that's Jesus. I mean, it's just so obvious. I mean, the second chapter of the New Testament, it is shepherds who come to worship the Savior. The under shepherds are coming to the shepherd. Well, I mentioned three things a shepherd must do. They must be present, they must provide, they must protect. That is true, but there's really a fourth one. If we were to read John chapter 11, I assume you're familiar with the I am the good shepherd language. So you can see we're skipping a lot in the Gospels, but I am the good shepherd is the second climax. If Psalm 23 is the first climax, the good shepherd is the second climax. This is Jesus. So I want to show you in that teaching, John 11, if you want to read it, Jesus takes the four works of a shepherd and he mentions them in that. So first one is presence. John chapter 11. I am the good shepherd. I know my own and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, I know the Father. You see what he's saying is a shepherd knows. So if you have a bunch of shepherds and their sheep all gather, and all the sheep will mix, all the shepherd has to do is say, we're going, and his sheep, knowing his voice, will only follow him. If another shepherd says it, his sheep aren't going to follow him. They don't know his voice. If you have dogs, another reason why dogs are better than cats, this works, right? Right? So because I mess with our dog the most, Man and the kids can just say, Katie, 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 and she could just completely ignore them. But if I say, Katie, she'll perk up and I'll have to come running, right? I mean, dogs are really good at this. You growing up as a kid, you knew mom and dad's voice, didn't you? Right? You heard it, right? As a parent, if there's a room full of kids, toddlers, and you have a toddler, you know your kids cry. You know it, right? We get this. How does Jesus' sheep know him? He's with them. Protection, John 11, verse 7. So Jesus said again, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. Part of the door, let people who should be in, and to keep people who shouldn't be in out. All who came before me are thieves and robbers. That is, I think, a direct attack to not just the Pharisees, but you can see it's in a picture of the prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Zechariah. These guys are thieves. They're getting paid, but they're taking from the sheep what belongs to them. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I came, they may have life and have it abundantly. He protects. He provides. 11 verse 9, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came, they may have life abundantly. Notice there that if you come through the door, you're his sheep. What do you get? He leads me to green pastures. He leads me to quiet waters. He restores my soul. Psalm 23. All right? He provides. Here's the fourth P. Presence, protection, provision, propitiation. It has to start with a P. Propitiation. Jesus provides atonement. John chapter 11, verse 11, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. How does Jesus define good shepherd? It is not presence, protection, or provision. It's propitiation. Here's how you know he's a good shepherd. He'll lay his life down for the sheep. When the lion comes, he lays his life down for the sheep. When the giant comes, he lays his life down for the sheep. When Pharaoh threatens, he lays his life down for the sheep. That motif has been there. We've just missed it. And Jesus comes and says, I am the good shepherd because I lay my life down for the sheep, and I give it up freely. I volunteer it. No one's taking it from me. I can kill the lion. I can slay the bear. I can chop off the head of the giant. I can stand before Pharaoh or Herod or Pilate. I'll lay my life down for the sheep. It's for the good of the sheep. I offer propitiation. Here's a few more. Verse 15, just as the Father knows me, I know the Father, and I laid down my life for the sheep. I skipped that part earlier. Verse 17, this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me. I lay it down on my own accord, right? I have the authority to take it down. I have the authority to pick it up. Now, we mentioned Abel earlier, right? And we just said, hey, it's the first one. And then we moved on. What if I told you this entire story began with Abel? What's the story of Abel? The righteous sheep who is himself murdered. He's like a lamb being led to the slaughter by the unrighteous. The difference is Abel, his life is taken, and he becomes like a lamb, this shepherd. With Jesus, his life is given. He becomes like a lamb, this shepherd. So you see, from the very beginning, page 4 of your Bible, all the way to the New Testament in Jesus, what you have is Jesus is a true and better Abel. He's a true and better Moses. He's true and better David, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's everything that the prophets longed for in the priests and prophets of their day. Embodied in this one person who is present, he provides, he protects, and he propitiates. And so this image of not just the royal shepherd, but the shepherd lamb, these contradictory images. You can't be both, can you? You can in Jesus. Because what you get in the Bible is this mixing of metaphors. We actually did a whole series on this a long time ago. It was before COVID. This was probably 40 years ago. So the best way to see this is to read Revelation. Because in Revelation, apocalyptic literature gives you room to mix metaphors. Poetry, you can do it a little bit, but apocalyptic, you can be wild with imagery. Right? Let me give you a few examples. In Revelation 5, Jesus is presented as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and a little lamb. Well, you can't be both. You can in apocalyptic literature. We get what's being said there. How is Jesus lion? He's lamb. What makes him such a powerful lamb is he's lion. I mean, it's a beautiful image. My favorite chapter of the Bible. Beautiful image, the lion lamb. Makes sense. But also the shepherd lamb imagery makes sense. Revelation chapter 7. Therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in the temple. He who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. Oh, I didn't notice that earlier when I worked on this. His presence will be a shelter. Boy, it sounds like a lamb, doesn't it? Or it sounds like a shepherd. They will hunger no more, neither will they thirst. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. That shows up later in Revelation, the scorching heat. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their shepherd. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because we've already been introduced to the Lamb in Revelation. How does a lamb a shepherd? How is a shepherd a lamb? It makes no sense to me, but it makes complete sense theologically. Let me give you another example. Revelation 14. You may miss it, but it's obvious. Once you see it, you won't unsee it. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from mankind's first fruits of God and the Lamb. Now, you don't see the shepherd language there, do you? It's right there. Here it is. Follow the Lamb. You don't follow sheep. You'll follow the Lamb if he's the shepherd. Isn't that fantastic? This is so awesome. Now, compare this to what the prophets told us to look for. Isaiah chapter 49, they shall not hunger or thirst, scorching wind or sun shall strike them. Does that sound familiar? He who has pity on them will lead them, by the springs of water will guide them. Psalm 23, he leads me to quiet waters. Even though I go through a valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil. If you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Isaiah 49. Ezekiel 34. Ezekiel 34, a lot of shepherd language. I will set up over them one shepherd, my servant David. He shall feed them. He shall feed them, be their shepherd. Here it is. And the climax is Christ gives his life and he takes it up again. And he rules and reigns as the royal shepherd, yes, but as the shepherd lamb. Prophet, priest, king, shepherd lamb. Isn't that incredible? So now you get, when David sits down as a king, and he's going to write a poem reflecting on who God is. He could say, the Lord is my monarch. The Lord is my king. I shall not want. His taxes are reasonable, and we do not go hungry. He can do that. But here's the king who could write propaganda about himself. He says, no, that's not the image I have in mind. The Lord is my shepherd. He is present, he provides, he protects, he propitiates. And how does it end? I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's a strange verse if you just stick to the metaphor. We'll talk about it. Why would you bring a lamb into your home? One of the reasons, it was for atonement. You bring them in to keep them from being dirty, protect them from get lost or sick or a broken leg or something. They have to be without blemish. It's the lamb you're going to offer for sacrifice. But in David's poem, the sheep doesn't come into the house to be a sacrifice, but he's welcomed in as a fellow citizen of the king. Isn't that incredible? It's right there in the Bible. So good. All right. Danny, did we miss anything? I always like thinking him. If Frank were here, he'd love it. I'm quoting from the King James. This is good stuff. I hope you guys, I eat this stuff up. So good. So what we'll do next week, Lord willing, is we'll start Psalm 23:1. We'll at least get down to verse 3. In theory, we'll get down to verse 3. And what I want us to do is we'll look at it with the shepherd motif, and then there's another way to look at it. So I think this will be really, really beneficiary. Okay. You're tired of hearing me talk. So, Terry, since you've had 2 weeks off, why don't you close us in prayer?
Father, we do thank you that you are